Admiral Catherine Kane stood on the bridge of a ship that shouldn't have existed. The vessel had risen from the ocean depths like a metal mountain, water streaming off its dark hull as ancient systems awakened for the first time in 10,000 years. The bridge was vast and curved, with walls that seemed to be made of living crystal that pulsed with soft light. But it wasn't really the bridge that amazed her. It was the knowledge flooding her mind from the ship's consciousness. She could feel the vessel's thoughts, its memories, its eagerness to serve after so many years of sleep. The ship had been waiting for her specifically, designed to bond with someone of her genetic line. I am the Emma's vengeance. The ship's voice spoke directly into her mind. Named for the child whose death awakened us all. I am yours to command, Fleet Admiral Kane. Kane looked out through the main viewer at Earth hanging in space above them. Hundreds of similar ships were rising from hidden bases around the planet. Each one was different, built for specific purposes her new memories helped her understand. Some were fast scouts that could appear anywhere in the galaxy instantly. Others were massive battle platforms that could engage entire fleets. A few were so large they were basically mobile space stations. How long until we're ready to deploy? She asked aloud. All primary systems are online, the ship replied. The fleet can depart in 1 hour. However, I must warn you, Admiral, the Galactic Council has already begun their response to Earth's ultimatum. The main viewer shifted to show space near Earth's outer planets. A massive fleet of alien ships had appeared there, thousands of vessels in formation. They were led by Council dreadnoughts, each one the size of a small city. Kane's enhanced awareness told her this was meant to be a demonstration of power, a show of force to make Earth surrender without a fight. How many ships do they have? Kane asked. Approximately 10,000 vessels in the demonstration fleet, Emma's vengeance replied. Intelligence suggests this is less than 1% of the Council's total military capacity. Kane felt a moment of doubt. Even with the ancient technology, could humanity really fight an enemy with millions of ships? Then she remembered Emma Chen's face from the ceremony footage, the little girl who had just wanted to make friends with aliens. The doubt vanished. Open a channel to all human ships in the system, Kane ordered. The communication system connected her to President Santos aboard the flagship of Earth's modern fleet. The president looked tired and stressed, clearly feeling the weight of potentially leading humanity to extinction. Admiral Kane, Santos said, our long-range sensors are showing massive energy readings from your position. Are the ancient ships really operational? More than operational, ma'am, Kane replied. They're eager to serve. But I need to ask you directly, are you prepared to authorize the use of weapons that could change the galaxy forever? Santos was quiet for a long moment. Admiral, they murdered a 12-year-old girl and laughed at us for caring. If we don't fight now, when will we fight? Understood, ma'am. Emma's vengeance and the ancient fleet are yours to command. The connection ended and Kane turned to address her ship directly. All vessels, this is Fleet Admiral Kane. We are authorized to engage hostile forces. Our mission is simple. Bring Emma Chen's murderer to justice. Show the galaxy that some lines should never be crossed. The response came from hundreds of ships simultaneously, their voices joining in harmonious agreement. Acknowledged, Admiral. Justice for Emma. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Council demonstration fleet, Admiral Vraktos of the Hegemony Navy was growing impatient. His species were professional soldiers who preferred quick, decisive action. This show of force against primitives seemed like a waste of time. Signal the human capital, he ordered his communications officer. Tell them they have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally, or we will begin bombardment of their major cities. The response came back faster than expected, but not from Earth's government. It came from something much closer. Council fleet, a human voice said calmly. This is Admiral Catherine Kane of the Emma's Vengeance. You are in violation of sovereign human space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Admiral Vraktos's 4 eyes widened in surprise. His sensors showed only empty space between his fleet and Earth. Human vessel, identify your location. Our sensors detect no ships in this area. We're right in front of you, Kane's voice replied. Perhaps your sensors need adjustment. That's when the Emma's Vengeance revealed itself. The ship had been using technology beyond Council understanding to remain invisible. As it dropped its concealment, Admiral Vraktos felt his heart stop beating for several seconds. The human vessel was 3 kilometers long and covered in armor that seemed to absorb light itself. Weapons that looked like they could crack moons decorated its hull. But most terrifying of all, It had appeared less than 1,000 meters from his flagship without any warning. Impossible, Vraktos whispered. Humans don't have technology like that. Admiral, his sensor officer called out in a voice filled with panic. I'm detecting massive power sources throughout the human ship.
Energy readings are off our scales.
And sir, there are more ships appearing around us. The Council fleet found itself surrounded by vessels that had materialized from nowhere. Each human ship was larger and more advanced than anything in their fleet. Weapons that radiated impossible energies were aimed at every Council vessel. This is your final warning, Admiral Kane announced. Withdraw from human space immediately. Admiral Vraktos was a career military officer. He had fought in dozens of battles across the galaxy. He knew when he was outgunned. But Council pride and military doctrine demanded he respond to threats with overwhelming force. All ships open fire, he ordered. Destroy the human vessels. 10,000 Council ships fired at once. Energy beams that could melt through mountain ranges struck the human vessels directly. Missiles with enough explosive power to level cities detonated against their hulls. The space around Earth lit up like a new star as the Council fleet unleashed everything they had. When the light faded, the human ships were completely undamaged. Their dark armor didn't even show scorch marks. Our turn, Admiral Kane said quietly. The Emma's Vengeance fired a single weapon. It wasn't an energy beam or a missile. It was something far more terrible. The weapon reached out and touched the fundamental forces that held matter together. Admiral Vraktos's flagship, all 3 kilometers of advanced alien engineering, simply stopped existing. It didn't explode or break apart. It just wasn't there anymore, as if it had never been built. The silence that followed was deafening. Attention, Council fleet, Kane announced. That was a demonstration. The next shot will target your entire formation. You have 30 seconds to withdraw. But Admiral Vraktos was already dead along with his entire crew. The second in command, a younger officer named Commander Zeth Kul, stared at the empty space where the flagship had been. His species' greatest warship had been erased from existence by a single shot from a human vessel. All ships emergency retreat, he ordered, his voice shaking. Maximum speed. Get us out of here now. The Council fleet fled toward the edge of the solar system, but they weren't fast enough. The human ships followed them effortlessly, moving at speeds that shouldn't have been possible. One by one, any Council vessel that didn't retreat fast enough was simply deleted from existence. Within 17 minutes, the demonstration fleet had been reduced to less than 100 ships. Those survivors reached the edge of human space and jumped to hyperspace as quickly as their engines could manage. Admiral Kane watched them go with satisfaction. Fleet Command, this is Emma's Vengeance. Human space is secure. Preparing for Phase 2. What's Phase 2, Admiral? Came President Santos's voice over the communication channel. Kane's enhanced awareness showed her star charts covering half the galaxy. Ancient human bases were awakening on thousands of worlds. Ships that had slept for millennia were rising from hidden locations throughout known space. Phase 2 is simple, ma'am, Kane replied. We're going to pay a visit to Nexus Prime. It's time for the Galactic Council to meet their new neighbors properly. As the ancient fleet prepared to depart for the Council capital, deep space monitoring stations throughout the galaxy began picking up massive energy signatures. Ancient human bases that had been hidden for 10,000 years were revealing themselves. Millions of ships were powering up for the first time since the Great Silence. The galaxy was about to remember something it had forgotten. Humanity hadn't disappeared during the Great Silence. They had simply been sleeping. And now they were awake, angry, and seeking justice for a murdered child. On Nexus Prime, emergency session bells were ringing in the Council chambers. The few survivors of the demonstration fleet had arrived with impossible reports of human ships that could erase matter and move faster than thought. High Counselor. Atheris slammed his scaled fist on the meeting table. This is clearly impossible. Humans have primitive technology. These reports must be exaggerated. But deep in the Council's archives, an ancient Etherian librarian named Vex 9 was pulling files that hadn't been accessed in thousands of years. Files about the Great Silence. Files about a species that had voluntarily given up galactic dominance. 3 months had passed since the human departure, and the first cracks in galactic civilization were starting to show. Dr. Keelarn floated in his environmental chamber, surrounded by holographic displays showing economic data that painted an increasingly troubling picture. The numbers didn't lie, even when he wished they would. The Cygnus trade route has collapsed completely, he reported to the Emergency Economic Committee. Without human freight companies, no one can maintain the shipping schedules. The Vrex have tried to take over, but their ships are too slow. The Ascendants refuse to do what they call menial transport work. Ambassador Zeftar studied the data with growing concern. What had started as a minor inconvenience was becoming a major crisis. How significant were human shipping operations? More than anyone realized, Dr. Keelarn replied, his voice heavy with worry. They handled approximately 60% of all inter-system cargo transport. Their ships weren't the biggest or the fastest, but they were reliable. They always delivered on time, and their rates were fair. The committee members exchanged uncomfortable glances. None of them had paid much attention to the mundane details of galactic commerce. Freight shipping was considered beneath the notice of most species leadership. It was just something that happened in the background, keeping goods moving from one world to another. Surely other companies can expand to fill the gap, suggested Ambassador Thiss, though her scales had shifted to an uncertain gray color. That's the problem, Dr. Keelarn explained, calling up another set of displays. Most other species specialized in high-value, low-volume cargo, rare minerals, luxury goods, advanced technology components. The humans handled everything else: food, raw materials, manufactured goods, personal belongings. The everyday items that keep civilization running. The implications became clearer as Dr. Keelarn continued his presentation. Agricultural worlds that had specialized in feeding the galaxy's growing population were now struggling to get their harvests to market. Manufacturing centers couldn't receive the raw materials they needed or ship finished products to customers. Even the Council's own operations were feeling the strain as supply chains broke down. What about their other businesses? Zeftar asked. Surely shipping wasn't their only contribution to the galactic economy. Dr. Keelarn's expression grew even more troubled. That's where the situation becomes really concerning. I've been investigating the extent of human integration into our economic systems. The results are disturbing. Over the next hour, Dr. Keelarn painted a picture that left the committee members stunned. Human companies had been involved in every aspect of galactic commerce, often in ways that weren't immediately obvious. They provided technical support services, managed supply chain logistics, operated maintenance facilities, and handled countless small but essential tasks that other species considered beneath their notice. Take the Ascendant Empire's manufacturing sector, Dr. Keelarn explained, highlighting a specific case study. Their automated factories were marvels of engineering, but they relied on human technicians for routine maintenance and troubleshooting. The Ascendants designed the systems, but humans kept them running day after day. Ambassador Catherine, who had been silent throughout most of the presentation, finally spoke up. That's ridiculous. Our engineers are the finest in the galaxy. We don't need human assistance with our own technology. Check with your manufacturing worlds, Dr. Keelarn suggested quietly. Ask them how production levels have been since the humans left. The uncomfortable silence that followed was answer enough. Reports from across Ascendant space had been trickling in for weeks. Production delays, equipment failures, quality control problems. Issues that had never existed when human support staff were quietly handling the details. It's the same pattern everywhere. Dr. Keelarn continued. The Thessian research institutes are struggling because human data analysts helped process their experimental results. Vrex military logistics are in chaos because human coordinators manage their supply networks. Even the hegemony's mining operations are having problems because human equipment specialists maintain their extractors. Captain Vorth 231, who had been observing the discussion through light patterns, suddenly flashed a series of urgent signals. His translated message appeared on the main display. New survey data from human territories reveals additional concerns. The committee turned their attention to the crystalline captain's report. Follow-up surveys of abandoned human worlds had revealed something even more troubling than the initial findings. The humans hadn't just taken their technology, they had taken their knowledge. All computer databases were completely wiped, Captain Vorth 231's message explained. Not just deleted, the storage media was physically destroyed and replaced with blank units. Technical manuals, procedure documents, training materials, all gone. They left behind the machines but took all the instructions for using them. Dr. Keelarn felt a chill run through his environmental suit. They didn't just abandon their infrastructure, they made sure no one else could benefit from it. The survey had also uncovered evidence of just how extensive human preparations had been. Hidden manufacturing facilities had been discovered on remote asteroids, their equipment stripped away, but the installations themselves revealing years of secret construction. Warehouse complexes on uninhabited moons showed signs of massive stockpiling operations that had been carefully concealed from galactic monitoring systems. They were building a parallel infrastructure, Zeftar realized. While maintaining their public presence in our civilization, they were secretly creating everything they needed to leave. But why? Ambassador Thiss asked, her scales now a deep blue of confusion. What drove them to such extreme measures? No one had an answer. The humans had never filed formal complaints with the Council. They had never requested changes to trade agreements or territorial arrangements. They had never even expressed dissatisfaction with their treatment by other species. If anything, they had seemed content with their quiet role in galactic society. Dr. Kalarn pulled up historical data from the past 50 years. I've been analyzing human behavior patterns since they joined the Council. There's something I missed before. They never fully integrated into our systems. The data showed a curious pattern. While other species had gradually become interdependent over the decades, sharing technology and pooling resources for mutual benefit, the humans had remained surprisingly self-sufficient. They contributed to galactic projects and participated in joint ventures, but they always maintained their own independent capabilities as backup. They were playing a different game entirely, Zeftar observed. While we were building an interconnected civilization, they were maintaining the ability to survive on their own. And now they've proven they could do exactly that, Dr. Kalarn added. They severed every connection cleanly without causing immediate disasters. But the long-term effects are becoming catastrophic. As if to emphasize his point, an urgent message arrived from the Vrex homeworld. Their primary orbital shipyard was experiencing cascade failures in its manufacturing systems. Without human maintenance crews, critical equipment was breaking down faster than local technicians could repair it. Similar reports were coming in from across the galaxy. The Thessian research fleet had lost 3 exploration vessels to equipment failures that their crews couldn't fix. Hegemony mining operations were shutting down as extraction equipment failed, and replacement parts couldn't be manufactured quickly enough. Even the proud Ascendant military was quietly struggling with logistics problems that were affecting their readiness. How long do we have before these problems become critical? Zeftar asked. Dr. Kalarn ran quick calculations. If current trends continue, we're looking at significant economic disruption within 6 months. Complete collapse of several key industries within a year. The humans weren't just participants in our civilization, they were foundational to it. The meeting ended with a sobering realization. The galactic community had become dependent on human competence and reliability, without ever acknowledging that dependence. The humans had been the invisible foundation holding everything together, and now that foundation was gone. As committee members dispersed to brief their respective governments, one fact became increasingly clear. Finding the humans wasn't just about curiosity anymore. It was about survival. The galaxy needed them back, but first, someone had to figure out where they had gone and why they had left so quietly in the first place. 6 months after the human departure, the Galactic Council faced a reality none of them had imagined possible. The emergency session convened not in the grand ceremonial chamber, but in a smaller conference room where the environmental system still worked properly. Station Nexus itself was beginning to show signs of decay. Ambassador Zeftar looked around the table at his colleagues, noting how much they had all changed. The proud confidence that had once characterized council meetings had been replaced by something much closer to panic. Even Ambassador Kethrin of the Ascendant Empire, who had always carried himself like a conquering hero, sat with slumped shoulders and dimmed golden skin. The situation has moved beyond economic inconvenience, Dr. Kalarn reported, his voice carrying the weight of months of increasingly bad news. We are facing systematic infrastructure collapse across multiple sectors and species territories. The numbers were devastating. Industrial production had dropped by 40% across Council space. Food distribution networks were failing, leading to shortages on worlds that had been prosperous just months before. Even basic services like power generation and water purification were having problems as maintenance schedules fell behind. and replacement parts became unavailable. "My government demands answers," Ambassador Thys declared, though her scales were now a permanent worried gray. How could our entire civilization become dependent on one species without anyone noticing? "Because we didn't want to notice," Zeftar admitted quietly. "The humans never demanded credit for their work. They were content to operate in the background, keeping things running while we focused on what we considered more important matters." The truth was becoming impossible to ignore. For 50 years, the humans had been the galactic community's maintenance crew, logistics coordinators, and problem solvers. They had taken on all the essential but unglamorous tasks that kept civilization functioning, freeing other species to pursue what they saw as more worthy endeavors. "They were our janitors," Catherine said bitterly, the admission clearly painful for someone whose species prided itself on superiority, "and we treated them like janitors." Dr. Killarn called up a detailed analysis that had taken his team months to compile. "It's worse than that. The humans weren't just doing work we considered beneath us, they were doing work we didn't even realize needed to be done." The presentation revealed the true scope of human integration into galactic systems. They had maintained the computer networks that coordinated interstellar commerce. They had staffed the communication relays that kept the galaxy connected. They had operated the automated systems that managed everything from traffic control to environmental monitoring. "Look at this data from the Vrex military network." Dr. Killarn highlighted a specific case. "Their command and control systems have been experiencing increasing failures over the past 6 months. Random glitches, communication delays, coordination problems." Ambassador Zeftar studied the information with growing alarm. These systems were supposed to be completely automated. Top-of-the-line Vrex military technology. They were automated, Dr. Killarn confirmed. But automation requires maintenance, updates, and troubleshooting. The humans provided those services so seamlessly that no one even realized they were happening. Captain Vorth 231 flashed an urgent light pattern, his message appearing on the display. Station Nexus experiencing similar problems. Essential systems failing at accelerating rate. As if summoned by his words, the lights in the conference room flickered momentarily. The environmental system made an unusual grinding noise before returning to normal operation. Small problems that would have been fixed immediately when human technicians worked throughout the station. "How many humans worked here?" Zeftar asked, suddenly realizing he had never thought about it before. Miralith consulted her records, her large eyes reflecting growing understanding. According to employment databases, 47 humans held various technical positions on Station Nexus. Maintenance, systems administration, communications, logistics coordination. Out of a total station population of how many? 8,412. The ratio was staggering. Less than 1% of the station's population, but they had been responsible for keeping the entire facility operational. Now, 6 months after their quiet departure, the station was slowly dying. "We need to face facts," Dr. Killarn continued. "The humans weren't just participants in our civilization. They were the foundation it was built on. While we were competing for status and territory, they were quietly making sure everything actually worked." Ambassador Thys coiled nervously. "But why did they never tell us how important they were? Why didn't they demand recognition, or higher status, or better treatment?" "Maybe they tried," Zeftar suggested. "In their own way." Dr. Killarn brought up historical records from the early years of human membership in the Council. "Look at this. In their first decade as members, the humans submitted dozens of proposals for improved infrastructure coordination, better maintenance protocols, enhanced communication systems. Every proposal was either ignored or assigned low priority. The pattern was clear in hindsight. The humans had tried to share their expertise and improve galactic systems, but the Council had been more interested in dramatic projects and prestigious initiatives. Routine maintenance and operational efficiency weren't considered worthy of serious attention. They stopped making suggestions after the first 10 years, Dr. Killarn noted. Instead, they just quietly started fixing problems themselves. "Without asking for permission," Catherine observed. "Without asking for credit either," Zeftar added. The realization hit the room like a physical blow. The humans had spent 40 years invisibly holding galactic civilization together, not because they had been asked to, but because they had seen what needed to be done, and had simply done it. They had become indispensable through competence and dedication, not through political maneuvering or demands for recognition, which makes their departure even more devastating. Dr. Kellarn concluded. They didn't just take their ships and their people. They took the knowledge of how everything actually works. Recent surveys had confirmed this in painful detail. Human-designed systems throughout the galaxy were failing not because they were poorly built, but because no one else understood how to maintain them properly. The humans had left behind user manuals and basic documentation, but the deep technical knowledge that came from years of hands-on experience was gone. It's like losing the master craftsman who built your house, Miralith observed. You can live in it for a while, but when things start breaking, you realize you never learned how to fix them. The emergency session continued for hours as the full scope of the crisis became clear. Food production worlds couldn't get their harvest to market. Manufacturing centers were shutting down as equipment failed. Research facilities were losing decades of data to corrupted storage systems. Even military forces were struggling as their advanced weapons and vehicles developed problems that local technicians couldn't solve. We have to find them, Ambassador Theiss declared. The humans have to return. Our survival may depend on it. What if they don't want to return? Catherine asked quietly. What if they left because they were tired of being taken for granted? The question hung in the air unanswered. For the first time since the human departure, the Council was forced to consider the possibility that their former colleagues might not want to come back. After 50 years of quiet service with little recognition or appreciation, the humans might have decided they were better off on their own. Then we need to give them a reason to reconsider, Seftar said finally. But first we need to find them. Captain Vorth 231's lights flashed urgently. Long-range sensors detecting unusual gravitational anomalies near Galactic Rim. Patterns suggest massive fleet movements. The news sent a ripple of excitement through the room. For months, search fleets had found no trace of where the humans had gone. Now finally there might be a trail to follow. How long ago? Dr. Kellarn asked. Gravitational waves suggest events occurred approximately 8 months ago. Before departure became public knowledge, the timing was perfect. The humans had been moving their fleets into position even before they began their final exodus from Council space. It was more evidence of the careful planning that had made their departure so complete and so devastating. We need to investigate, Seftar decided. If the humans are out there, we need to find them and try to understand why they left. As the emergency session ended, one thought echoed through the minds of every representative present. The humans had been the best thing that ever happened to galactic civilization, and no one had realized it until they were gone. The search fleet that departed from Station Nexus represented the largest joint military operation in Council history. Ships from every major species flew together toward the Galactic Rim, following the gravitational anomalies that might lead them to the missing humans. Ambassador Zeftar commanded the mission from the Vrex flagship, while Dr. Kellarn coordinated the scientific analysis from his mobile laboratory. 3 weeks into their journey, they found the first real clue. Derelict vessel detected, announced Captain Vorth 231, his light patterns reflecting excitement. Human design, but heavily modified. The ship they discovered floating in the void between stars was unlike anything in the Council databases. Clearly of human origin, it had been stripped down to its basic hull and rebuilt with unfamiliar technology. The engines were gone, the living quarters had been converted to cargo space, and the entire vessel appeared to have been designed for one purpose, carrying as much equipment as possible as far as possible. It's the evacuation transport, Dr. Kellarn concluded after studying the scans. Built to move maximum cargo with minimum crew. But the most disturbing discovery came when they boarded the vessel. The ship's computer had been completely destroyed, its memory banks physically melted. Navigation logs were gone, personnel records had been wiped, and even the basic operating manuals had been removed. They're not just hiding where they went, Zeftar observed. They're making sure no one can follow the trail backwards either. The search fleet pressed on, following sensor readings and gravitational disturbances deeper into unexplored space. What they found challenged every assumption the Council had made about human capabilities and intentions. Hidden bases appeared on asteroids and rogue planets throughout the region. Not recent constructions, but facilities that had clearly been operating for decades. Mining operations, manufacturing plants, research stations, and shipyards, all carefully concealed from Council observation and all now abandoned, with the same systematic thoroughness that had, characterized the human departure from civilized space. Look, at the size of this operation. Dr. Kellern marveled as they surveyed a massive asteroid base. This facility could have supported thousands of workers. The excavation alone would have taken years. Ambassador Thys studied the readings from her environmental suit, her scales shifting to deep purple with concern. How did they hide something this large from our long-range sensors? The answer came from Captain Vorth 231's detailed scans. The human bases had been built using stealth technology, far more advanced than anything in Council databases. Not just simple sensor dampening, but sophisticated systems that actively concealed their presence by mimicking natural phenomena. They made their asteroid bases look like ordinary rocks, the captain's translated message explained. Their orbital stations appeared to be space debris. Their ships used emissions patterns that matched background radiation. Dr. Kellern ran calculations on his portable equipment. The level of coordination required for this operation is staggering. They would have needed detailed maps of unexplored space, careful timing of construction phases, and coordination between hundreds of separate facilities. Maps they could have been making for decades, Zeftar realized. Every time humans participated in Council exploration missions, every time they provided navigation updates for trade routes, they were gathering intelligence. The implications were staggering. For 50 years, the humans had been systematically mapping the galaxy beyond Council space, while their colleagues believed they were simply contributing to shared knowledge. They had identified resource-rich asteroids, habitable worlds, and strategic locations throughout the unexplored regions, then quietly built the infrastructure needed to support their entire civilization in exile. They were never really committed to staying, Ambassador Thys observed sadly. They were always planning to leave. But Dr. Kellern wasn't convinced the situation was that simple. Look at the timeline more carefully. The oldest facilities we found date back only about 30 years. That means for the first 20 years of their council membership, they were genuinely trying to integrate. The data supported his theory. Early human bases were small and obviously experimental, as if they were testing concepts rather than implementing a master plan. The massive, sophisticated operations they were discovering now had been built more recently, suggesting that the decision to leave hadn't been immediate. Something changed, Zeftar concluded. Something made them decide that exile was preferable to remaining in Council space. The search fleet continued to find evidence of human foresight and planning. Automated systems had been left running in many facilities, maintaining basic functions while stripping away anything useful. Resource extraction operations had been carefully shut down with environmental restoration protocols active. Even abandoned research stations showed evidence of experiments that had been completed before departure. They didn't leave in a hurry, Dr. Kellern noted. This was a planned withdrawal that took years to execute. The most significant discovery came at the edge of the search area, where long-range sensors detected what appeared to be a massive debris field. As the fleet approached, the true nature of the site became clear. It's a shipyard, Captain Vorth 231 reported, the largest construction facility I have ever observed. The abandoned shipyard stretched across several asteroids, its docking bays large enough to accommodate vessels bigger than anything in the Council fleet. But like every other human facility they had found, it had been completely stripped of useful technology and information. The scale of this operation rivals anything we've built in Council space, Zeftar marveled. How many ships could they have constructed here? Dr. Kellern's analysis suggested the facility could have produced hundreds of large vessels over its operational lifetime. Combined with similar yards they had discovered throughout the region, the humans had clearly built a fleet capable of transporting their entire civilization. But where did they go from here? Ambassador Thys asked. The answer came from gravitational analysis of the surrounding space. Massive disturbances indicated that enormous fleets had departed from the region, but the trail led even further into unexplored space, toward regions where Council ships had never ventured. They had another destination in mind, Dr. Kellern concluded. This wasn't their final stop. It was their staging area. As the search fleet prepared to venture even deeper into the unknown, they made one final discovery that shook their understanding of human intentions. Hidden in the computer core of the abandoned shipyard was a single data file that had somehow survived the systematic purge. It was a message, clearly intended for whoever eventually found the facility. The words were simple, but their impact was profound. To our former colleagues in the Galactic Council, we thank you for 50 years of cooperation and shared knowledge. We harbor no anger toward any species or individual. Our departure was not motivated by conflict or dissatisfaction, but by opportunity and hope. We have found something beyond the rim that offers possibilities we could never achieve within the constraints of established civilization. We wish you prosperity and peace. Perhaps our paths will cross again under better circumstances. The message was signed with a simple identifier: the human diaspora. Diaspora, Dr. Kellarn repeated thoughtfully. They don't see this as exile. They see it as expansion. Expansion to where? Zeftar wondered aloud. Long-range sensors provided a partial answer. The gravitational trail led toward a region of space that Council astronomers had always considered empty. A vast area between spiral arms where few stars existed and fewer still had been explored. It was exactly the kind of place a civilization might go if they wanted to build something new without interference. They didn't leave because they were unhappy, Ambassador Thiss realized. They left because they found something better. The search fleet was forced to halt at the edge of their operational range, but they had learned enough to understand the scope of what the humans had accomplished. This hadn't been a desperate escape or an angry departure. It had been the largest and most successful migration in galactic history, carried out with precision and planning that put Council operations to shame. As they began the long journey back to civilized space, the search team carried with them a sobering realization. The humans weren't hiding from the Council. They had simply moved beyond it, into regions where they could build whatever they wanted, without the limitations and compromises that came with galactic citizenship. The question that haunted the return journey was simple but troubling. What were the humans building out there, and would the Council ever be invited to see it? 1 year after the human departure, the Galactic Council faced a choice that would determine the future of their civilization. Ambassador Zeftar stood before the emergency assembly, looking out at representatives who bore little resemblance to the confident leaders who had gathered in this chamber just 12 months ago. The crisis had humbled them all. "The situation report is stark," he began, his voice carrying the weight of months of devastating news. "Industrial production is down 70%. Food distribution networks have collapsed on 43 worlds. 3-star systems have requested emergency intervention to prevent complete societal breakdown. The numbers told a story of systematic failure. Without human expertise, the complex systems that supported galactic civilization were breaking down faster than anyone could repair them. The Ascendant Empire's mighty war machine was grounded due to logistics failures. The Thessian research fleet had lost half its vessels to equipment malfunctions. Even the wealthy hegemony was struggling to maintain basic services on its core worlds. We have identified the problem, Dr. Kellarn added from his environmental chamber. We built our civilization on a foundation of human competence, then ignored that foundation until it was removed. Now we must decide how to proceed. Ambassador Kethrin rose slowly, his golden skin dimmed by months of stress and humiliation. For someone whose species prided itself on superiority, the admission he was about to make came hard. My government has instructed me to propose immediate negotiations with the human diaspora, he announced. We are prepared to offer significant concessions in exchange for their return and assistance. What kind of concessions? Ambassador Thiss asked, her scale shifting to an interested blue. Full voting membership for all human colonies. Guaranteed representation on all major committees. Exclusive contracts for infrastructure maintenance across Council space. Whatever they want, the offer was unprecedented. The Ascendant Empire had never made concessions to anyone, let alone a species they had previously considered inferior. That they were willing to do so now showed just how desperate the situation had become. There's one problem with that approach, Dr. Kellarn interjected quietly. Our search fleets have been trying to contact the humans for months. They're not responding to any communication attempts. They're ignoring us? Zeftar asked. It's worse than that. Captain Vorth 231's translated message appeared on the main display. Long-range sensors indicate massive construction activity in human space. Energy signatures suggest projects on a scale larger than anything in Council records. The implications were troubling. The humans weren't hiding or struggling to survive in exile. They were building something, and whatever it was required enormous amounts of power and resources. Building what? Ambassador Thiss wondered aloud. That's what we need to find out, Zeftar replied. But first, we need to address the immediate crisis. Can our civilization survive without human assistance? Dr. Kellarn had been working on exactly that question for months. His analysis painted a grim picture of 3 possible futures, none of them attractive. Option 1, we muddle through on our own, he explained, calling up projections on the main display. Industrial capacity will stabilize at roughly 30% of previous levels. Food distribution will be limited to core worlds. Research and exploration will be reduced to almost nothing. We can survive, but barely. Option 2, we attempt to rebuild human capabilities ourselves. This would require massive investments in education and infrastructure, probably taking several decades to achieve even basic competence. During that time, we would experience continued degradation of living standards across council space. And option 3, Zeftar prompted. We admit that we need help and find a way to convince the humans to provide it. The silence that followed was deafening. For species that had spent centuries believing in their own superiority, the idea of asking for help was almost unthinkable. But the alternative was watching their civilization slowly crumble. There is a 4th option. Captain Vorth 231's message suddenly appeared. Recent sensor data suggests possibilities we have not considered. The crystalline captain's latest survey reports had detected something unexpected in the ruins of human space. While the colonies remained abandoned and the infrastructure inactive, automated systems were still running on many worlds. More importantly, these systems were maintaining the planets in perfect condition for future habitation. The humans didn't destroy their former colonies, the captain explained. They preserved them, as if they intended to return someday. Dr. Kellarn studied the data with growing excitement, or as if they intended for someone else to use them. Look at these power consumption patterns. The automated systems are running at minimal levels, just enough to maintain atmospheric processors and ecological systems. They left us a gift, Zeftar realized. 17 fully functional star systems ready for colonization. The discovery changed everything. The human departure wasn't just a loss for the Council, it was also an opportunity. 17 systems with established infrastructure, breathable atmospheres, and functional ecosystems represented expansion possibilities that would normally take centuries to develop. But that still doesn't solve our fundamental problem, Ambassador Thiss pointed out. We still don't know how to maintain the systems they left behind. Maybe we don't need to, Dr. Kellarn suggested. Maybe we need to learn to build our own. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent alert from the station's communication center. Long-range sensors had detected something unprecedented. A massive energy signature from the direction of human space, larger than anything in Council records. What kind of energy signature? Zeftar demanded. The answer came in the form of a transmission that appeared simultaneously on every communication network in Council space. Not a hack or an intrusion, but a signal so powerful it overrode all other broadcasts. The message was simple and devastating. Greetings to our former colleagues in the Galactic Council. This is Admiral Sarah Chen, speaking for the United Human Colonies. We are pleased to announce the successful completion of our Exodus project and the establishment of New Terra, our permanent home beyond the galactic rim. The transmission included visual data that left the Council representatives speechless. Images of a massive space station, larger than any structure ever built, orbiting a pristine world in a system that hadn't existed in any star charts. But it wasn't just the size that was impressive. It was the technology. The human construction showed advances that were decades beyond anything in Council space. Energy systems that defied known physics, materials that shouldn't have been possible to create, and designs that suggested a complete revolution in engineering principles. How did they advance so quickly? Dr. Kellarn whispered. Admiral Chen's transmission continued. Our new home has provided us with opportunities for growth and development that would never have been possible within the constraints of established galactic civilization. We have made discoveries and achieved breakthroughs that we are eager to share with species that are ready to move beyond old limitations. The message concluded with an invitation that shook the Council to its core. Any species interested in joining us in building a new kind of civilization is welcome to send representatives to New Terra. We believe the future belongs to those who are willing to work together as equals, rather than competing for dominance over outdated systems. They're not just surviving, Zeftar realized. They're thriving, and they're offering us a chance to join them. But on their terms, Ambassador Catherine observed, as equals, not as their superiors. The choice facing the Council was clear but difficult. They could continue trying to maintain their failing civilization, struggling with systems they didn't understand and problems they couldn't solve. Or they could swallow their pride, admit their mistakes, and ask the humans for help in building something better. What do we have to lose? Ambassador Thiss asked quietly. Our current path leads to collapse anyway. Our pride, Catherine replied honestly. Our sense of superiority. Our belief that we are the natural leaders of galactic civilization. Maybe those things were holding us back, Dr. Kellarn suggested. Maybe the humans left because they realized that true progress requires cooperation, not competition. As the emergency session continued, reports arrived from across Council space. Other species were already preparing diplomatic missions to New Terra. The humans' offer was too attractive to ignore, especially for civilizations that were struggling with the same infrastructure problems that plagued the Council. We need to make a decision quickly, Zeftar warned. If we wait too long, we may find that the invitation is withdrawn. The vote, when it came, was closer than anyone expected. Pride and tradition fought against practical necessity and hope for the future. In the end, pragmatism won by a narrow margin. The Galactic Council would send a delegation to New Terra. They would admit their mistakes, acknowledge their dependence on human expertise, and ask for help in building a better future. It would be humbling, but it might also be the beginning of something greater than any of them had imagined. As Ambassador Zeftar prepared for the journey to human space, he reflected on the lessons of the past year.